The market was busy due to an ongoing fair. There a boy was walking with a bowl of leftover food. His name was Pyo-woo, 14 years of age. He was an orphan and a drifter. While walking, a man in a dark robe approached him. The scene now shifts to Pyo-woo being in a dark confined space. He couldn't move his body and it was pitch black darkness. He was hungry and scared. He began reciting his name and his parents. His senses came back after a while and he could move his body. He was underground. He moved towards the wall, but it was in vain. He wanted to survive. There a sudden someone approached him. It was his self-imagination asking him why he is so desperate to survive. He should give up as there was no value to his worthless life. MC declined, not until he stabs the one who trapped him here. He can't rest even in death. Thus, desperate to survive, he lifts himself up with great struggle. He moved towards the sound of falling water and found moss growing on the walls. He was hungry, so without knowing it was edible or not, he ate the moss. After regaining strength in his legs, he moved around and found out he was confined in a tight space of 3 by 3 room. There was an iron door in one side with a hole in it from which the food came. It was leftover and rotten food meant to give to animals. He smelled the food and found out it was 5 different kind of leftovers. Thus there were more people who confined him here. It was highly likely that there were also more people confined like him here. He couldn't understand their goal, but that was for later on. Now he needed to eat and survive. The MC was doing his usual exercises, muscles straining in the cramped stone chamber. It had been 4 months since he was thrown into this place. 4 months of silence, darkness, and a single meal shoved through the slot each day. By now, he could see in the pitch-black void as if it were faint twilight. The damp floor crawled with insects, some skittering over his feet, others vanishing into cracks he had learned to ignore. Then he felt a shift, soft, cold scales brushing against his wrist. A snake coiled around his arm, its body tightening. Its eyes glowed a deep, eerie red as it lifted its head, staring straight into his. Before he could react, it struck, its fangs sinking into his hand with a sharp, burning pain. The pain hit him like a burning wave. He collapsed onto the cold stone floor, writhing as the venom spread through his veins. Every heartbeat felt like fire tearing through his body. His breath broke into ragged gasps, his vision blurring despite the darkness. He clawed at the ground, trying to endure, but the agony was overwhelming. Eventually, his strength gave out and he slipped into unconsciousness. When he opened his eyes again, the slot screeched and a metal tray slid in. Food. Somehow he was still alive. He snatched it up instantly, devouring it with trembling hands. His body still ached, but he could move. He could think. And strangely, the darkness no longer felt dark. He could see everything, the walls, the insects, even the faint shimmer of moisture on the stones. His gaze shifted. There, coiled silently in the corner, was the very snake that had bitten him, watching him with those same glowing red eyes. Slowly, the MC lifted his arm toward the snake. It didn't lunge this time, just watched him, tongue flickering, eyes glowing like embers in the dark. He understood now. Because of this creature, he could see without light. Because of its bite, his body had changed. And he had heard the tales, survive enough venom and the poison becomes your shield. He needed strength, any strength, if he was ever going to take his revenge. The snake curled around his wrist, its scales cold against his skin. Then, without hesitation, it struck. Fangs sank into his flesh. Venom surged into his veins. This time he didn't scream. His whole body trembled, muscles contracting violently, but he clamped his jaw shut and endured. He pressed his forehead to the ground and let the fire rip through him, refusing to collapse. Hours passed in agonizing silence. He didn't stop. He didn't break. And the snake did not leave his side. He woke hours later, body still trembling from the venom. His breath was ragged, but he was alive. Then he felt it, vibrations faint but unmistakable. The iron door scraped open with a harsh metallic groan. For the first time in 4 months, he stepped outside the darkness of his cell. The air was cold and carried a foul stench, a smell of decay. Compelled by instinct, he followed it to a nearby room. There on the floor lay a boy, around his own age, face pale, limbs stiff, the flesh already beginning to rot. A failed survivor. He looked at the corpse for a moment. No pity, only resolve. He continued down the hallway, each step echoing in the silent corridor, until he stood before a massive iron gate. He pushed. The door groaned open. Inside he saw them. Children his age, gaunt and exhausted, huddled together like livestock waiting for slaughter. Their eyes widened as he entered. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. Pyo-woo stepped out through the iron door. Two figures stood ahead, a boy and a girl both around his age. Their eyes squinted, and used to the darkness he moved through so naturally. He walked past them without a sound. The girl's voice trembled. Who are you? He turned slightly. Pyo-woo. They exchanged glances before answering. My name is So Yo-woo, the girl said softly. And I'm Song Chin-woo, the boy added. Pyo-woo nodded once. I came from the adjacent sector. Their expressions froze. No one was supposed to survive alone in another sector. Ignoring the shock, Pyo-woo continued forward. The stench grew heavier. Rotting corpses of children lay scattered along the hallway, silent reminders of despair. He opened another iron door and gestured. Follow me. They clasped each other's hands and stayed close behind him in the pitch dark. Beyond the next door was another chamber filled with children of the same age. Pyo-woo walked through the rooms inspecting quietly. A few more bodies, but here the dead hadn't starved, they had taken their own lives. He frowned. The food distribution here was better, more than enough to survive. Whoever imprisoned them was deliberately discriminating, separating children by unknown criteria. But for what purpose? Behind him, So Yo-woo was already speaking with the others, and soon they introduced the group to Pyo-woo. He didn't linger. Pyo-woo pushed open the next iron door. A blinding white light slammed into their eyes. The children shielded their faces, thinking they were finally outside. But they weren't. As the light faded, a vast underground structure revealed itself. An enormous house with a courtyard, built like a mansion buried beneath the earth. A prison disguised as a home, or a training ground for something far worse. Pyo-woo stepped inside the large underground building, but the moment he entered, he noticed something was off. The place was empty, no furniture, no traces of life. The walls were uneven, the supports roughly placed. It looked less like a home and more like a structure thrown together in a hurry, as if whoever built it cared only about function, not comfort. As he examined the crude interior, soft footsteps approached him. A girl with stark white hair emerged from the shadows. Her expression was unreadable, but her steps carried quiet confidence. My name is Lee Min, she said, stopping uncomfortably close. Pyo-woo instinctively shifted back, caught off guard by her sudden approach. She stared at his face, no at his eyes. They're beautiful, she murmured. Your eyes, they're red. Pyo-woo froze. Red? He hadn't noticed any change. It had to be the side effect of the red-eye snake's bite. A subtle transformation, barely visible unless someone looked closely. Before he could respond, So Yo-woo walked up with a few other children behind her. We've decided to stick together, she said. It's safer that way. You should join us. Her tone was composed, but her eyes held a quiet plea. The others watched Pyo-woo, waiting for his answer. I'll see, he replied curtly. He wasn't rejecting them out of coldness. In truth, he knew they were still in the dark. They had no idea what lay ahead, what kind of trials or traps awaited them. Moving blindly as a group could be just as dangerous as being alone. So Yo-woo nodded reluctantly. As the other children banded together for comfort and survival, Pyo-woo turned away. He walked ahead on his own, alert and silent, trusting only his instincts. In a place built by unknown hands beneath the earth, surrounded by corpses and frightened children, he couldn't afford to trust anyone, not yet. The children quickly divided themselves into 4 groups, each led by someone with a loud voice or strong presence. Pyo-woo was the only one who stayed alone, not fitting into any of their makeshift alliances. He continued to explore the underground structure. The walls were too clean, the wooden beams too new, the soil around the foundation freshly disturbed. This place wasn't old. It was recently built, and whoever built it had poured a massive amount of money into the hidden facility. As he pieced things together, a metal hatch suddenly clanked open high above. A rope unwound and a large basket descended into the courtyard. The children swarmed toward it instantly. Food. But before chaos could break out, So Yo-woo stepped forward and raised her voice. Stop. The food will be managed by the group leaders. No fighting. The 4 budding leaders gathered around the basket, trying to look authoritative. Pyo-woo approached calmly. I'll be taking my share. When he reached for the basket, a hand blocked his path. Yeom Il-jung, one of the group leaders, glared at him. No one takes food without permission. Pyo-woo's expression hardened. In the next second, he grabbed Yeom Il-jung's face with a single hand and slammed him onto the ground, pinning him down. One palm pressed the boy's neck, the other forced his cheek and eye painfully into the dirt. What did you say? Pyo-woo asked coldly. Say it again. Panic erupted around them. Stop. Don't kill him. But Pyo-woo didn't loosen his grip. His irritation was boiling over. These kids already trying to impose control, already fighting for dominance when they didn't even understand their situation. So Yo-woo rushed forward. Stop, she said firmly. Pyo-woo didn't look at her. Why should I? So Yo-woo swallowed but answered clearly, because none of the group leaders will object to you getting your share. I'll make sure of it. That was enough. Pyo-woo released Yeom Il-jung with a final shove, leaving the boy trembling on the ground. The others stared at him with a mix of fear and awe. He took only what he needed, then walked away and ate alone. He wasn't angry about the food. He understood exactly what this was. A test. Someone was observing them, evaluating who was useful, who was dominant, who would break, who would survive. These children, all of them would eventually become enemies in the struggle ahead. It didn't matter to him. Later, So Yeol approached again. Now everyone views you as a threat, she said. An enemy. Pyo-woo looked at her calmly. But you benefited the most. She blinked, confused. Most of Yeom Il-jung's members joined your group, he said. You purposely ate less to earn their trust. That makes you the strongest group now. So Yeol's eyes widened. She hadn't expected him to see through her so easily. I keep an eye on everyone, Pyo-woo added quietly. That's how you survive in a place like this. The next day when the basket descended, the food inside was far less than before. Seeing this, Pyo-woo immediately understood. The real test had begun. The children panicked and argued, groups clashing over the shrinking rations. Pyo-woo took only what he needed and stepped away, knowing this was all deliberate. From now on, survival would reveal everyone's true nature. Mak Nozum, the smallest and weakest child in Seo Yeol's group, had worked harder than anyone just to keep up. But the next morning his cold, lifeless body was found in a corner of the underground hall. The children cried, some in rage, others in silent fear. Yet everyone understood why he died. He was the easiest target. Seo Yeol's eyes hardened. She wanted revenge, not in chaos but with the same method. Eliminate the weakest in the enemy groups. And so, an invisible war began. Each night, as the lights dimmed and fear took over, a child from a different group disappeared forever. Sleep became dangerous. Trust vanished. Every group watched one another, whispering, suspecting, counting who would vanish next. The underground had turned into a silent battlefield. And only the ruthless would survive. Pyo-woo quietly scraped the damp moss from the wall and ate in silence. The underground was pitch black, but he could sense movement, 4 figures creeping toward him. Yeom Il-jung. Even with one damaged eye, his killing intent leaked like poison. They thought the darkness would give them an advantage. They were wrong. The moment they lunged, Pyo-woo melted into the shadows. A muffled gasp, a choke, a thud. One by one the children were dragged into silence, their bodies collapsing unseen. Soon only Yeom Il-jung remained. He swung wildly at the darkness, panic swallowing him as every attack hit nothing but air. When Pyo-woo finally stepped into faint view, Yeom Il-jung's back was already pressed against the wall. I'll serve you, he stammered, trembling. I'll do anything, just spare me. Pyo-woo looked at him, not with anger but with the cold clarity of someone who understood betrayal too well. You're not someone who obeys, he said. Yeom Il-jung's scream was short. After that, only silence remained. Pyo-woo disappeared back into the darkness. The next morning, screams echoed through the underground. The bodies of Yeom Il-jung and his entire group were found scattered across the dark hall. Every group leader exchanged tense glances. No one said it aloud but they all knew the truth. Pyo-woo had done it. From that moment, none of them dared provoke him. The infighting intensified among the remaining children, and by nightfall, yet another group was erased, this time swallowed whole by Seo Yeol's growing faction. Meanwhile, away from the chaos, Pyo-woo climbed onto the roof beams and silently observed the structure above them. The layout was strange. Every corridor, every room, it wasn't random. It was an exact replica of a building style he had seen before, as if someone wanted the children to memorize it unconsciously. A realization chilled him. They weren't being tested for survival. They were being trained, raised as assassins. The next day the hatch opened much faster than usual. Seo Yeol glanced at Pyo-woo. She could sense something was off. Even Pyo-woo felt a faint tension in the air. Then they descended. Masked men. Without a word, they rushed into the hall and began beating the children with long sticks, striking backs, legs and ribs mercilessly. Screams filled the underground. Many tried to fight back. Most were knocked down instantly. Pyo-woo did not resist. He curled his body, absorbing the blows quietly. Drawing attention now would be a mistake. He knew better than to challenge enemies without knowing their true strength. As he endured, he noticed something. 3 masked men stood apart. Not beating anyone, not moving aggressively. They were the ones truly in control. The real handlers behind this entire hell. One of the 3 masked overseers finally raised his hand. Enough. The beating stopped instantly. The hall fell silent except for the children's ragged breathing. I am First Sword, he said. Your lives are now under my control. From today onward, I will shape you, train you, and decide who among you deserves to live. One guy protested and questioned him. Before the sentence even finished, the boy's head fell to the ground, cleanly severed. Blood splattered across the floor. The children froze in horror. No one, he said calmly, will speak without my permission. His voice echoed through the underground like a death sentence. You will not question. You will not resist. You exist to obey. And the children understood. This was no training hall. This was a slaughterhouse shaping killers. The scene shifted to a dimly lit chamber behind the underground facility. First Sword stood with his subordinate, the air thick with the smell of oil and steel. You know how a curse poison is made? First Sword began. You place hundreds of insects in a sealed jar, and let them devour each other. Only the most vicious, the most resilient, the most cunning survives. He looked back toward the underground hall. That is exactly what we are doing with these children. His subordinate bowed. Yes, sir. Report, First Sword demanded. Who stands out? Seo Yowol, sir, the subordinate answered. She leads the largest group. Calm, calculating, capable. 2 others show promise as well. First Sword's gaze sharpened. And the sole survivor of Sector 1? Pyo Wool. His endurance is abnormal, sir. Sector 1 had harsher conditions and much less food. Yet he survived alone. Keep an eye on all of them, First Sword said. With that, he turned and walked away. As he reached his private quarters, he opened a sealed message delivered earlier. A single line appeared on the scroll. To the Blood Shadow Captain. Target for assassination. Duration 7 years. Reward upon completion, 500,000 gold yang. First Sword's eyes narrowed. A target worth 500,000 gold. This was no ordinary mission. The children were gathered before the tall building with a red flag on its roof. A masked man declared, your goal is simple, reach the flag. Coldly he added, whoever comes last, will suffer worse than hell. At once the children sprinted in panic. Pyo Wool moved quietly among them, not racing but calculating. Pyo Wool made sure not to stand out. The instructors were already wary of the lone survivor from Sector 1, so he kept his movements quiet and unremarkable. During rest hours he sat alone, reading the thunder-splitting technique again and again. Seo Yowol approached him, curious. Why do you keep reading the same page? She asked. Pyo Wool didn't answer. His eyes never left the text. Realizing he wouldn't speak, she quietly walked away. Soon after, the courtyard echoed with shouts. The instructors ordered the children to duel each other, testing strength, instinct, and cruelty. One by one, the terrified children stepped into the circle. And survival became the only rule. During his duel, Pyo Wool's opponent suddenly lunged with a real knife. Not to win but to kill. Pyo Wool's eyes narrowed. He glanced toward the instructors. And saw that none of them intended to stop it. They were watching silently as if murder was part of the lesson. The attacks grew wild and relentless, the boys slashing like a cornered animal. It annoyed Pyo Wool more than it frightened him. He didn't want to stand out. He didn't want to reveal his true ability. So he dropped his knife. The opponent rushed in, thinking he had the advantage. Only to have Pyo Wool step forward and drive a sharp kick into his gut, sending him collapsing to the ground, choking for breath. The instructors exchanged satisfied nods. The children were improving, becoming faster, sharper, more ruthless. But it still wasn't enough. Their true target was someone far more dangerous. And so the training would grow harsher, more brutal. And many of the children would not survive what came next. The boy lay on the ground, his arm twisted at an unnatural angle, broken from Pyo Wool's counter. An instructor immediately walked toward them, his presence colder than steel. Did you do this? He asked. Yes, Pyo Wool replied calmly. Before the word fully left his mouth, a blade was already at his neck. Pyo Wool hadn't even seen the instructor draw it. A thin line of cold metal pressed against his skin, unmoving, deadly. For a moment the entire courtyard froze. Then the instructor slowly withdrew the sword and turned away. As he walked back, he spoke without looking at Pyo Wool. An assassin does not leave traces. His voice was flat, merciless. If you strike, you kill, not injure. The lesson was clear. From here on, hesitation meant death. They should not leave any traces behind. 6 years passed in the blink of an eye. The training hall had changed, and so had the children, now hardened teenagers with sharp eyes and quicker hands. A masked guard stood at the center of the room, scanning every shadow, every corner, searching for the trainees who had scattered and hidden at his command. One by one he dragged them out, behind pillars, inside crates, under stairwells. His steps were silent, but his presence was overwhelming. None of them escaped him. None except one. Time passed. Minutes stretched. His patience thinned. Finally, the masked guard exhaled sharply. Enough. Come out. I know you're here. There was no response. But then, a faint shift of fabric. Right beside his feet, the old rugs slowly rose, and from beneath them emerged a boy no longer small, Pyo-woo, taller, sharper, eyes like a still pond. Completely grown from the frightened child he once was. The guard stared at him for a long moment. Pyo-woo had hidden in the one place no one ever checks, right in plain sight. Later that night, the trainees, now nearly adults, sat around a crackling fireplace. The cold stone corridors felt less hostile with the smell of roasting meat filling the air. They ate simple skewers, one of the few comforts they ever got. Pyo-woo glanced at the boy sitting across from him. His face wasn't his own. It was the face of a trainee who had died not long ago. A borrowed identity. You're using his face now? Pyo-woo asked quietly. The boy nodded without emotion. It's better than losing my place. Before the mood could sink further, Seo Yoel spoke, her golden eyes reflecting the firelight. The food has changed, she said. They're giving us better meat. That only means one thing. Everyone looked up. We'll receive our first mission soon. Silence fell. The fire popped, and for a moment each of them felt the weight of what was coming. Their years of training were finally reaching the point of no return. The scene shifts to a dim-lit chamber deep within the hideout. The first sword removed his mask, revealing an aged face carved with scars and years of bloodshed. His lone eye flickered in the candlelight. 300 abducted, he muttered. Only 30 remain. Soon, their training will end. Footsteps echoed. The second sword and third sword entered, bowing slightly. Their presence tightened the already heavy air. It's nearly time, the first sword said, staring at the trembling candle flame. We'll see which of them survives the real world. They asked why he has taken off his mask. The first sword explained that it's been 6 years and it is too stifling, so they also took their masks off. They now discussed the children have exceeded their expectations and it was very regretful that they will be discarded after this mission. They had no choice in this matter, said the first sword, and he pulled out a book from his robe. It was the final step. The children were gathered now, everybody became adults. The first sword explained that 3 of them will learn these techniques and the other 27 children will try to kill them. They were again terrified of it as they have to kill yet again. The first sword clarified that this will be the last thing they will do before going out. Pyo-woo raised his hand saying he want to learn this. Seo Yoel confronted him saying he would be a scapegoat for others. He replied with a stern expression that they will see if he becomes a scapegoat or a wolf. The scene now shifts to a guy being stabbed. He is the second one to have learnt the technique by drawing lots. Song Chanwoo didn't want that, but he had no choice. Now only Pyo-woo was left. They discussed among how he was not seen after they had a training few days back. They wondered if killing the instructors was rather easy than confronting him. But Song Chin-woo explained that the instructors will surely have some countermeasure against them. After they left, Pyo-woo came out from the shadows. He was now thinking of how the instructors have pursued others to find him. It's his time now to find out about these instructors. Pyo-woo finally reached the deepest room of the mansion. Using turtle breathing and the thunder-splitting technique, he moved like a shadow, undetectable even to the guards outside. After searching every corner, he found the scroll. Target, Wu Gunsang. He didn't know the name, but anyone who required raising assassins for 7 years had to be someone enormous. Rage simmered inside him. They suffered all this because of one man. Just then, footsteps. He hid instantly. The first sword entered. His instinct screamed that someone had trespassed. Calling the second and third sword, they concluded the only one capable of this infiltration was Pyo-woo. He's grown too bold, the first sword said coldly. We will remind them all who holds their lives. He took out a sinister flute, the Hell Flute, a last resort measure. Outside, the children continued looking for Pyo-woo. Then the shrill, eerie sound rang through the compound. One by one, the children collapsed, writhing, trembling, clutching their bodies in unimaginable pain. Pyo-woo staggered. They had activated the restriction. The children writhed on the ground, screaming in pain as the restriction took hold. A sharp ringing pierced Pyo-wul's ears, the activation signal. But unlike the others, the pain barely slowed him. Using internal energy fusion, he examined the condition of those nearby. Li Min was suffering the most. As he traced the sensation, realization struck him: it wasn't a technique. Poison. A poison triggered externally. And the only medium that fit was a poisonous insect, likely activated by sound. Footsteps echoed. Instead of fleeing and revealing that the restriction barely affected him, Pyo-wul dropped to the ground, convulsing, perfectly mimicking agony. The guards spotted him and shouted for an instructor. Moments later, the instructor arrived, eyes cold. Without hesitation, he drew his sword and drove it straight through Pyo-wul's shoulder. Blood spilled across the floor. The instructor demanded furiously, "What did you find in my room?" His sword flashed, killing intent pouring out as he prepared to strike again. Enough. The second sword stepped in, blocking the blade. "We still need him," he said calmly. "He's the finest assassin we've produced. This mission cannot be completed without Pyo-wul." The first sword snarled. "He's dangerous. Too difficult to control." The second sword's gaze hardened. "We can control him. The hell flute still binds him." Silence followed. Slowly, the first sword's rage cooled. He sheathed his weapon and turned to the guards. "Give them the antidote." Moments later, the pain vanished. The children collapsed in relief. The first sword then addressed them all coldly. "This happened because Pyo-wul infiltrated our base. Let this be a warning." His eyes swept over the survivors. "Anyone who dares to do the same will suffer far worse." The scene shifted to Pyo-wul, sitting alone in meditation, calmly reviewing everything that had happened. Piece by piece, the answer became clear. The snake bites he had suffered in the past had altered his body. His resistance to poison had grown far beyond normal limits. Footsteps echoed nearby. A group of trainees whispered among themselves, uneasy. They spoke about how Pyo-wul had always lived alone, hidden in the darkness, never relying on anyone. Suddenly, he appeared right behind them. They screamed in shock, stumbling back. Seo Yowell stepped forward, her expression serious. "You infiltrated the instructor's base," she said. "You must know something. What restriction did they place on us?" She stared at him closely. "You weren't here when it was activated. You came afterward, which means it had no effect on you." The others fell silent, watching him. Pyo-wul answered, "Yeah." Pyo-wul spoke calmly. "I know what kind of restriction was placed on you." They demanded answers immediately. He looked at them coldly. "Why should I tell you?" "We're comrades," one of them insisted. Pyo-wul's eyes narrowed. "Comrades don't hunt someone down to kill him with such zeal. You did just yesterday." The words struck deep. Silence followed. One of the group finally stepped forward. "Fine. I'll owe you a favor. When I join the floral performance troupe, I'll treat you favorably." Seo Yowell nodded. "I'll do the same. No one from my group will hinder you. I'll consider you a friend." Only then did Pyo-wul speak again. "It's curse poison," he said. "Activated externally." He paused. "Figure out the rest yourselves." They left, expressions grim. Only Li Min remained. She hesitated, then said softly, "My real name is Lee Sealman." She met his gaze. "I'll treat you as a special friend." Pyo-wul said nothing, but he remembered the name. Sometime later, the first sword announced that they would finally leave the underground cave. The children were stunned. He ordered Seo Yowell to lead them once they emerged. The first sword, however, only wondered how many would survive outside. His retirement made it irrelevant to him. A large basket was lowered, and they ascended one by one. On the way up, Pyo-wul asked Seo Yowell about the poison. She explained that Li Min's knowledge of curse poisons had helped neutralize it. As they rose, Pyo-wul tore his sleeve to cover his eyes and instructed the others to do the same. After 7 years in darkness, sudden light could blind them. When they emerged, a shadowy figure approached, the Blood Shadow Captain. He praised them for meeting the requirements to carry out the mission. Pyo-wul heard his voice and remembered it for his revenge. Later the children were taken to a new place. The children finally relaxed. Some cried at the sight of flowers, overwhelmed by something so ordinary after such suffering. Soon after, they were issued weapons. The mission was about to begin. The scene then shifts to a quiet inn, where the Blood Shadow Captain and the First Sword sat drinking together. The captain expressed his gratitude and informed the First Sword that his retirement had been approved. The First Sword thanked him in return and shared his thoughts, that the children were far too talented to be discarded after completing a single mission. The Blood Shadow Captain replied calmly that the request was clear. Once the mission ended, every trace had to be erased. Hearing this, the first sword asked a single question. Had the captain discovered who the requester was? The captain shook his head and refused to answer, saying it was wiser not to offend a powerful figure. He warned that until they possessed enough strength to stand on par with the 100 Wraith Union, the greatest assassin group in Jianghu, they needed to act carefully. If this mission was completed successfully, they would finally be one step closer to that goal. The scene then shifts to Pyo Wool quietly admiring his weapon. One of the others asked if he, of all people, was trembling. Pyo Wool replied calmly that he wasn't, though in truth it seemed the blade itself was trembling in his hand. He denied it without expression. Around him, the others exchanged menacing looks, barely concealing their anticipation. They couldn't wait to chop someone's head off. After some time, they were ordered to gather outside. Under strict instructions, they followed the fourth sword in complete silence. Beneath the full moon, the children moved flawlessly, keeping pace with him, something he silently admired, proof of their brutal training. They eventually reached their destination, and the fourth sword signaled them to hide. Pointing toward a manor perched on the mountainside, bathed in moonlight, he revealed that their target was inside. The sight froze them in place. It was the very same manor they had memorized again and again during 7 years in hell. A single thought ran through their minds. Who was this man to make them suffer for 7 years just to reach him? A few days earlier, within the gardens of the Amei sect, a young woman named Seol Ran walked quietly among blooming flowers. She was the youngest disciple of the sect's head, the feared abbess of 9 calamities. The abbess suddenly asked her if she resented her. Seol Ran shook her head and replied calmly that her life was constantly at risk, so feeling inconvenienced was only natural. Her answer enraged the abbess. She shouted, reminding Seol Ran that she had picked her up as an orphan from the streets and raised her herself. Instead of retreating, Seol Ran stepped forward and hugged her. She gently asked the abbess not to get so angry. The abbess sighed and revealed the truth. If negotiations with the Qingqing sect failed, they would have no choice but to follow the plan they had prepared for the past 7 years. Before she could say more, another disciple rushed in with urgent news. The deal with Qingqing had been finalized. This was what the abbess wanted, yet it came at a cost. For the sake of this alliance, Seol Ran, talented enough to become her successor, had been reduced to a political bargaining piece. Her disciple Zhonghua hesitantly asked what should be done about the assassins they had prepared. The abbess fell silent, deep in thought. The scene shifts to the present. Pyo Wool lay hidden underground alongside the others, waiting for nightfall. The plan was about to begin, yet unease crept into his chest. He instinctively expanded his senses, scanning the surroundings. Then, a spear suddenly pierced through the earth, impaling the man beside him. Blood sprayed across the soil. Pyo Wool froze. He couldn't comprehend the madness unfolding before him, or understand why this betrayal was happening now. The spear lodged in the ground had been thrown by a half-bald man standing atop the ridge. His eyes widened in satisfaction, so the intelligence had been correct. Assassins were hiding in the mountains of the Qingqing sect. Search the area, he commanded coldly. Kill them all. Pyo Wool immediately realized the disadvantage they were in. Without hesitation, he gave the signal to retreat. In the next instant, the assassins burst from their hiding places, scattering in every direction. The plan was simple. Break the encirclement first, then regroup later. Qingqing disciples gave chase. The half-bald man moved again. One spear flew. Then another. And another. Each throw was precise. One assassin after another was skewered mid-escape, bodies collapsing before they could even scream. Only one remained. The final spear shot toward Pyo Wool. He twisted his body and intercepted it with a sharp kick. The spear changed trajectory, blasting past the disciples and grazing the half-bald man's cheek. Blood trickled down. Fury exploded in the man's eyes. Leave no one alive. Pyo Wool struck decisively, cutting down the disciples who closed in on him. His movements were efficient, lethal, but the numbers were overwhelming. He understood immediately. This wasn't a fight he could finish. Survival came first. And so Pyo Wool vanished into the chaos, already searching for a path out of the slaughter. Watching Pyo Wool escape, the half-bald man's irritation deepened. He strode forward to one of the assassins who had been impaled by his spear, the man still crawling weakly across the ground. With his final breath, the assassin looked up, confusion and despair in his eyes. "I don't want to die," he whispered. "What did we ever do to you, to deserve this?" The half-bald man looked down on him with undisguised contempt. "You dared to set foot against the prestigious Qingqing sect, he replied coldly. 4 mere assassins like you, that alone is reason enough to die. Without another word, he turned away, leaving the assassin's life to fade out. Pyo-woo ran without looking back. As he fled, a single question echoed in his mind: who leaked the intel? Among the assassins, only he knew the true identity of the target. The instructors had left before the mission began. Now it was clear. They hadn't been abandoned by accident. They had been discarded, to erase all evidence. A sharp whistle cut through the air. Pain exploded in his shoulder as an arrow struck him. Another followed. An archer was pursuing him relentlessly. Pyo-woo endured the pain, closed the distance, and ended the man in a single motion before plunging into the river below. Cold water swallowed him. As he surfaced downstream, he noticed a familiar mark, the secret blood code, smeared and distorted. Someone had survived. He followed it cautiously. He noticed that the pursuers were wearing different clothes, which concludes that more than one sect is pursuing them. Suddenly, a wave of killing intent surged. Pyo-woo twisted aside just in time, a blade grazing past his neck. He turned and froze. It was Lee Min. Seeing Pyo-woo alive, her tense expression softened instantly. The grip on her blade loosened, relief washing over her face. For the first time since the betrayal began, neither of them stood alone. The moment Lee Min saw Pyo-woo, the strength left her body. Her legs gave out. Pyo-woo caught her before she hit the ground and gently laid her down on the cold earth. Blood soaked through her clothes. Her breathing was shallow, too shallow. "What about the others?" he asked quietly. She shook her head weakly. "Everyone scattered. Seo Yeol and Song Chinwoo stayed behind. They fought, so the rest of us could escape." Her eyes trembled. She already knew. "I'm injured too badly," she whispered. "I won't make it." Pyo-woo clenched his jaw. "You don't want to live?" She smiled faintly. "Of course I do. But I know my body. I can't." She asked if he will stay beside her. She was scared to be alone in her final moments, but seeing him she was happy that at least she won, die alone. Her voice cracked. "Why did this happen to us? What did we ever do wrong to deserve this?" Pyo-woo was silent for a moment. Then he told her everything. About Wu Gun-gang. About the Blood Shadow Group. About how they had been raised, used, and discarded. Nothing more than evidence meant to be erased. "I'll take revenge," he said flatly. "I swear it." Her hand tightened weakly around his sleeve. "Survive," she whispered. "No matter how. I just want the ones who made me feel this despair, this pain, to suffer the same." Her breath faltered. "Say my name," she asked softly. "Not the fake one, my real name." Pyo-woo swallowed. "Lee Sealman." A faint smile touched her lips. "Thank you." Those were her last words. Her hand slipped from his sleeve. Her body grew still, cold against the earth. For a long moment, Pyo-woo didn't move. Then something inside him shattered. The grief burned away, replaced by something far darker. Killing intent poured out of him, thick and suffocating. He gently closed her eyes. "I will kill them," he said quietly. Not as a promise. Not as rage. But as a fact. Every last bastard responsible for this. The moon above reflected coldly in his eyes. From this moment on, Pyo-woo would no longer merely survive. He would become the calamity that hunted them down. Deep within the mountains, inside a vast and secluded mansion, the Blood Shadow Captain sat across from the fourth sword. The air between them was heavy. "The plan collapsed at the last moment," the captain said calmly. 7 years of training, all wasted. The assassins we raised are gone." The fourth sword's eyes narrowed. "You truly don't know who the requester was?" The captain shook his head. "And I don't intend to. Crossing that line would invite death." The order came by letter. Something about that answer unsettled the fourth sword. "If they're erasing evidence," he said slowly, "won't they come for us next?" The captain scoffed. "Arrogance is the privilege of survival. No one knows where we are. We'll remain hidden until the storm outside passes." As he spoke, the fourth sword picked up the letter lying on the table. His expression changed. "There's a smell," he muttered. He brought it closer, faint, almost imperceptible. The Blood Shadow Captain's smile vanished. "Tracking incense." Silence fell. Their location had already been exposed. A guard came crashing through the gate, his body flung like debris as the doors shattered inward. Shouts erupted instantly. The mansion was under attack from all sides. "The righteous sects," someone cried. The first sword reacted at once. "Fall back. We can't face this many orthodox forces head-on." The fourth sword turned to the Blood Shadow captain. "We have to retreat, now?" But the captain already knew. There was nowhere left to run. Slowly he drew his blade. And then he charged. Blood sprayed as he tore through the attackers, every strike ruthless and precise. Screams echoed through the halls as bodies fell one after another. But even his killing spree couldn't stem the tide. Then, a new presence descended onto the battlefield. A woman stood before him, whisk in hand, robes marked with the emblem of Manhwa, disciple of the Abbess of 9 Calamities. The moment the captain saw her, understanding struck him like a blade. "So it was you," he muttered. "The requester." "Don't utter a single word," Manhwa snapped, her voice filled with disgust. "Filthy assassin." The captain laughed bitterly inside. "I should have known. An orthodox sect hiring assassins to erase another orthodox sect's rising talent. The so-called righteous revealing their true faces. Hypocrites, every last one of them." Manhwa lunged forward without hesitation, her sword flashing toward his wounded body. The Blood Shadow captain met her strike head-on, sparks flying as steel clashed against steel. Two figures collided amid the chaos. One fighting to silence the truth, the other fighting to expose it. They battled relentlessly, each strike carrying killing intent. Only one of them would walk away alive. Blood Shadow captain fought tooth and nail against the hypocrite nun, knowing this would be his final battle. He unleashed everything he had left: blood, fury, and resolve. Though she knew he was an assassin who had stepped into the light from the shadows, she was still being overwhelmed. Then, without warning, another figure intervened. A blade flashed, and the captain's ankle was severed. As he crashed to the ground, blood soaking the earth, a familiar presence emerged. The leader of the Amay sect had arrived, the hypocrite old hag herself. Seeing her, the captain roared in rage, his voice echoing through the battlefield. Through clenched teeth, he screamed of betrayal. He finally understood. It was the Amay sect that had requested the assassination. And now they were here to erase all evidence, to preserve their false image as a righteous sect. Without hesitation, the old hag stabbed him, silencing his accusations, and walked past his dying body. Nearby, the first sword had already fallen, defeated by the youngest disciple who had come to meet her master. Soon after, an assassin was dragged forward. He was the leader of the assassins, the one who had accepted the request. Coldly, the old hag asked, "How many of you were there?" He refused to answer. Her power descended upon him, immense, merciless torture. Unable to endure it, he finally broke. 28, he gasped. Moments later, he died. "And how many are dead?" she asked. 24, came the reply. Her eyes narrowed. "Find the rest quickly. Finish them." Then she turned to the youngest disciple, her voice calm and cruel. "Prepare for the wedding. This is all for the sake of the sect." With that, the hypocrite old hag left. The scene shifted. A dark forest, silent and heavy with killing intent. At the gates of the Qingqing sect, Pyo-wul stood alone. His eyes burned with fury. Revenge was no longer a thought, it was a vow. If they wished to brand him an enemy, then he would become one. He would hunt down everyone connected to this incident, and wipe them out without mercy. The next morning, a Qingqing sect disciple left the mountain to gather herbs and medicinal plants. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Without warning, a shadow moved behind him. Before he could react, Pyo-wul struck from the back, locking the disciple in place and dragging him into the undergrowth. Cold steel brushed his throat. "Speak," Pyo-wul said. Terrified, the disciple spilled everything. When asked about Wu Gunsang, the disciple hesitated, then answered. "He is the sect's young prodigy. He has mastered nearly every martial technique of Qingqing. The current sect leaders believe he will raise the sect to even greater heights." At those words, Pyo-wul's fury ignited. Because of him, they had suffered for 7 years. Pyo-wul's fingers moved with lethal precision, pressing the disciple's acupoints. Something shifted. The disciple staggered, then turned back, and froze in sheer horror. Standing before him was his own face. Pyo-wul's features had changed, perfectly mirroring the disciple's appearance. His voice followed, calm and merciless. "Sleep." As the disciple collapsed, Pyo-wul straightened his robes. The disguise was complete. Without another glance back, he turned toward the mountain. Pyo-wul was ready to infiltrate the Qingqing sect. Disguised as the Qingqing disciple, Pyo-wul passed through the sect gates without resistance. The Qingqing sect was bustling with people. Disciples moved in disciplined lines, elders gave instructions, and servants hurried between halls. The architecture struck him deeply. The layout, the courtyards, even the training grounds were nearly identical to the mansion where they had once been trained. A bitter chill crept into his chest. Soon he found himself standing before the residence of his target, Wu Gunsang. Elsewhere within the Qingqing sect, the sect leader and the elders were gathered in a closed meeting. Their expressions were grim. How could mere assassins dare attack a prestigious sect like ours? One elder spat. There must be someone behind them, another said coldly. We will uncover the mastermind and make them pay. The sect leader's voice cut through the room. This is a crucial period for Qingqing. We cannot afford to fall behind. During the war against the Celestial Demon Union, many sects had formed an alliance. When the dust settled, those sects had risen to unprecedented heights. But Qingqing and Amei had been left behind, reduced to little more than great families of Sichuan. Their former glory diminished. Silence fell. All eyes turned to a single truth. To reclaim our honor, the sect leader said, everything depends on Wu Gunsang. He was the son of an elder, the sect's greatest prodigy and their final hope. At that very moment, Wu Gunsang was in isolated training, seeking deeper enlightenment, just as his father had declared. Unaware that death had already arrived at his gate. Wu Gunsang was deep in training. He moved amidst dozens of swords, their blades embedded upright in the ground around him like a silent forest of steel. Each swing of his sword was precise, sharp, and overflowing with talent. Sword intent rippled outward as if the weapons themselves acknowledged him. He was every bit the prodigy the sect boasted of. Elsewhere, the elders continued their discussion. If he is raised properly, one elder said, Wu Gunsang can rival the successors of the three great sects. Another nodded. And there is also the matter of his marriage, to the youngest disciple of the Amei abbess. The room grew quiet. She is beautiful, exceptionally talented in martial arts and politically, a perfect match, an elder said. On the surface. Yet doubt lingered. The eldest among them spoke slowly. The abbess of Amei is dangerous. Her ambition knows no limits. If we bind ourselves to her sect too tightly, we may end up being devoured instead of strengthened. That was why the marriage proposal had been rejected again and again. But reality was cruel. In Sichuan we cannot afford another enemy, someone muttered. Silence followed. At last the sect leader spoke. All our hopes rest on Wu Gunsang. The rise of Qingqing depends on him alone. Disguised as a disciple, Pyo Wu lingered near Wu Gunsang's residence, quietly gathering information. Nearby, two disciples whispered among themselves. I heard he brought women into the sword training hall again, one said with a snort. Keep your voice down, the other warned. But the first didn't stop. He always uses secluded training as an excuse. What kind of seclusion needs company? Pyo Wu listened in silence. People are the same everywhere, he thought. No matter the sect, no matter the banner. Night fell. The Qingqing sect sank into stillness. That was when Pyo Wu began his mission. He slipped through shadows and barriers, infiltrating Wu Gunsang's residence without alerting a single guard. After searching briefly, only one place made sense. The sword training hall. From a vent in the ceiling, Pyo Wu looked down. Wu Gunsang lay asleep beside a woman, discarded robes strewn carelessly across the floor. Even at rest, his presence was overwhelming, his energy dense and refined. Pyo Wu's eyes narrowed. He's stronger than the Blood Shadow captain. But still, he's human. Silently, Pyo Wu drew out a silk thread, thin as a whisper of death, and lowered it toward Wu Gunsang's neck. At that instant, Wu Gunsang's eyes snapped open. A violent surge of inner energy exploded outward. Pyo Wu reacted instantly, yanking the thread tight and lifting Wu Gunsang into the air. But before the assassination could be completed, Wu Gunsang slashed with his hand, his condensed energy cutting the silk thread apart. He landed lightly on the floor. The woman screamed and fled. Now the two stood facing each other. Wu Gunsang calmly slipped on his robe, his expression unreadable. Who are you? He asked. Pyo Wu did not answer. Instead, he drew his blades and lunged forward. Wu Gunsang raised two fingers. Clang. The strike was stopped effortlessly. A shockwave blasted Pyo Wu backward, sending him crashing into a pillar. Before he could recover, Wu Gunsang advanced. His fingers extended, his energy forming a massive invisible sword that crashed down upon him. Pyo Wu blocked, but it wasn't enough. He was being overpowered. In desperation, Pyo Wu hurled a blade straight at Wu Gunsang's face. Wu Gunsang caught it barehanded. A faint smile appeared on his lips. You're skilled, he said. Impressive, for an assassin. His gaze sharpened. Who sent you? Silence. After a moment, Wu Gunsang sneered. Did that bitch's father finally lose patience and send you? Pyo Wu's mind paused. What is he talking about? Wu Gunsang had always been a genius. From a young age, his talent in martial arts was unrivaled. Elders praised him endlessly, disciples admired him, and expectations piled upon his shoulders. Somewhere along the way, that praise twisted into arrogance, and arrogance into desire. He began indulging himself, believing that nothing and no one could touch him. Then came the mistake. One night, he crossed a line with the daughter of an elder. The truth was buried, silenced by status and fear, but the girl could not bear the weight of it. She took her own life. Since that day, Wu Gunsang had lived with a single certainty. Someone would come for him. That was why he believed the assassin before him had been sent by the girl's father. Pyo Wu, however, had no idea what he was talking about. The fight intensified. Wu Gunsang moved like a living sword, each step radiating overwhelming power. His strikes were heavy, refined, absolute. Pyo Wu could do little more than barely defend himself, his arms screaming in pain with every clash. He used every trick he knew, feints, poison needles, hidden blades. None of it worked. Creating distance, Pyo Wu swept his arm outward. Every sword embedded in the training hall rose and flew toward Wu Gunsang like a storm. One by one, they were blocked. Effortlessly. Still, Pyo Wu attacked. That was when Wu Gunsang unleashed his special technique. The sword strike came like an ocean wave, vast and crushing. Pyo Wu ducked behind the woman's discarded form for cover, but it meant nothing. The energy tore past him regardless. He dodged by instinct alone. Then, a memory surfaced. Training days. Cold stone floors. Blood-soaked hands. The moment he had learned the three martial techniques, not to win, but to survive. Pyo Wu tightened his grip on his sword. This time, he did not dodge. He blocked. Steel met energy. The wave split. Wu Gunsang's eyes widened. How? That was Qingqing's secret sword technique. Irritation turned into fury. Wu Gunsang slashed wildly now, abandoning elegance for brute force. But Pyo Wu understood something he did not. He had learned this sword with death at his back. Each counter was precise. Each movement calculated. Pyo Wu waited. And when the opening appeared, he stepped in. The blade pierced straight through Wu Gunsang's chest. The prodigy froze. Blood spilled. The overwhelming presence vanished. Wu Gunsang collapsed lifeless. Pyo Wu stood still, breathing heavily. The mission was complete. But outside, the sect slept peacefully, unaware that their pillar had fallen. What followed would not be silence. It would be chaos. Morning broke over the Qingqing sect. And with it came chaos. Disciples sealed the gates, patrols doubled, and alarm bells echoed across the mountain. At the heart of it all lay a single truth. Wu Gunsang was dead. His lifeless body rested in the sword training hall, cold and unmoving. Beside it, his father collapsed, clutching the corpse, crying and screaming as though his voice alone could pull his son back from death. My son, my son. The elders stood frozen in shock. Who could have done this? Who would dare kill the pillar of Qingqing? Anger soon replaced disbelief. Then, someone noticed the girl, the only witness present when the incident occurred. Whispers spread. The junior brother of the sect leader spoke first, his voice low and sharp. She knows too much. If she speaks, it will stain not only Wu Gunsang's name but ours as well. Silence her. The room erupted. That is unacceptable, one elder snapped. We are a righteous sect. We do not commit such vile acts. Others agreed, denouncing the suggestion. To kill a witness would be to admit guilt, something none of them were willing to do. Then, a figure rose. Wu Gunsang's father stood up slowly, his hands trembling as he gripped his blade. His eyes were hollow, drowned in grief and madness. He walked toward the girl. His voice cracked. Why didn't you protect my son? Why do you get to live, when he doesn't? The girl pleaded to spare her, but he didn't listen, neither the other elders. Before anyone could move, the blade flashed. The girl fell. Blood stained the stone floor. The hall fell into dead silence. The elder dropped his sword and collapsed to his knees, screaming into the empty air. I don't know what to do anymore. He was my whole life, my everything. No one stopped him. No one spoke. The sect leader and the elders stood in silence, their faces rigid. Not out of righteousness, but because they knew. The truth had been buried. And the price had already been paid. The news of Wu Gunsang's assassination soon reached the Amei sect. Inside her hall, the old hag erupted in fury. Her carefully laid plan, to devour the Qingqing sect through marriage, had been completely ruined. The alliance she sought, the control she intended to seize, all of it had vanished overnight. She roared, her killing intent shaking the room. "Send disciples immediately," she ordered coldly. "Join the Qingqing sect and hunt down the assassin. I want no trace, no evidence, of our involvement to ever surface." Then she turned to her youngest disciple. "You should be relieved," she said mockingly. "At least you won't have to suffer through that marriage now." The girl lowered her gaze. "I am only sad," she replied softly, "that my husband is dead." The old hag scoffed. "Foolish sentiment." Without another glance, she turned and left. The scene shifted. A vast agricultural field, stretching endlessly under the morning sun. Farmers worked silently, cutting weeds and tilling the soil. Along the dirt road walked a man, singing quietly, a sickle resting on his shoulder. Guards stopped him. "Who are you?" the captain demanded. The man smiled calmly. "I've just finished clearing weeds. I'm heading home." The captain studied him, then gestured for his men to let him pass. But as the man walked away, the captain's eyes narrowed. The sickle. Too clean. He raised his hand sharply. "Stop him." At once the guards moved. The captain fired a flare into the sky, its signal bursting into light. "We found the assassin." The man's smile faded. The disguise had failed. Surrounded, weapons drawn, Pyo stood still for a breath. Then his eyes hardened. If escape was no longer possible, he would carve his way out. The hunt had begun. Pyo mask fell away, and his features returned to normal. The moment his true face was revealed, the guards attacked. They never stood a chance. Steel flashed. Bodies fell. When it was over, only the captain of the guards remained, suspended helplessly, thin strings biting into his neck. "Who sent you?" Pyo asked coldly. Fear broke the man. The abbess," he gasped. Pyo eyes darkened. "Who?" "The leader of the Amei sect." Piece by piece the truth surfaced. Amei and Qingqing had always been like cats and dogs, bound by convenience but filled with mutual distrust. The assassination request, the cover-up, the sudden hunt, it all pointed to one source. The old hag of Amei. Rage surged through Pyo. "Even if I die," he vowed quietly, "I'll drag her to hell with me." Reinforcements arrived moments later. Pyo cut through them without hesitation and vanished into the wilderness. Inside a command tent, a monk knelt before Manhwa, the abbess's head disciple. "The assassin has escaped the inescapable heaven net." Manhwa slammed her hand down, furious. "How is a mere assassin delaying us this long?" "Continue the pursuit," she ordered. "No matter the cost." Before the orders could be carried out, the youngest disciple spoke. "He's exhausted," she said calmly. "He'll seek shelter. And the safest place for him is where he was raised." Silence fell. Jianghwa's eyes sharpened. "Set the ambush." Pyo ran, blood and exhaustion weighing down his steps. "How are they predicting my path?" Then, his gaze met hers. The youngest disciple stood ahead, calm and unmoving. Understanding struck. Without hesitation, Pyo leapt from the cliff. Pyo staggered forward, his body weighed down by severe injuries, when a massive sword strike tore through the air behind him. The blow narrowly missed, carving a deep scar into the earth. An elder of the Qingqing sect stepped forward, eyes burning with fury. "Capture him alive," the elder commanded. "I want answers." Qingqing disciples moved to surround Pyo. At the same moment, Manhwa arrived from the opposite side. The instant she saw Pyo, her killing intent surged. Unlike Qingqing, she had no interest in capturing him. She attacked with the intent to kill. Caught between two forces, Pyo pushed his body beyond its limits, dodging blades, slipping through gaps, refusing to slow. At last he plunged into the underground cave. Both sects followed. They halted at the entrance, stunned. The cave was enormous, vast enough to house an entire sect. But what truly shook them lay deeper inside. Buildings, training grounds, layouts identical to Qingqing's sect. The elder burst into laughter, rage twisting his voice. "So this is it." He turned sharply. "Capture him alive at all costs. Whoever is behind this will pay, even if they belong to the 5 great sects." Jianghwa's eyes narrowed. She understood instantly. Without a word, she sent a silent order to her disciples. "Kill the assassin the moment you see him." Only the youngest disciple remained calm. This place was not a trap for Pyo-woo. It was his territory. Here, the hunter had become the prey. Searching room by room, the Qingqing elder discovered a hidden scroll, the assassination request itself. His expression darkened as he read it. With a roar, he tore it apart using his inner power. The wall behind it shattered. Beyond it lay a hidden chamber. Venomous snakes writhed across the floor, hissing softly. And at the center, a book. Its title sent a chill through the elder's spine. 9 Demon Style. Shock overtook fury. This, he whispered. The elder froze when he saw the book. 9 Demon School. A name erased from history. Long ago, during the War of Demons and Heavens, the 9 Demon School had been annihilated so completely that only fragments remained in forbidden records. Even among sect elders, little was truly known, only that its disciples practiced techniques too cruel, too efficient, and too terrifying to be allowed to exist. Yet here it was. The elder's expression darkened. So the roots lead this far back. Meanwhile, deeper within the cave, darkness swallowed sound. Qingqing and Amei disciples spread out, moving cautiously, their breathing uneven. Torches flickered, casting long, distorted shadows across the stone walls. Then, a scream cut short. Silence followed. One by one, the disciples vanished. They never saw him clearly. Only threads, thin, almost invisible, glinting for a fraction of a second before tightening. Bodies were pulled into the darkness, struggles ending without a chance to resist. Panic spread. Formation broke. Whispers turned into sobs. "This isn't a man," someone muttered. "It's a ghost." Faces twisted in pure horror as they realized the truth. They were not hunting an assassin. They were being hunted. Pyo-woo moved like a shadow born of the cave itself. His strings danced silently, claiming lives with ruthless precision. No wasted movement. No mercy. In that underground domain, the disciples were no longer warriors. They were sheep. And the darkness belonged to him. The head disciple crouched low, scanning the ground for footprints. Nothing. The stone floor was pristine, too pristine. A chill crept up his spine. Then, click. His foot pressed down on something unnatural. "Dodge," he shouted. Too late. A sharp whistle cut through the air. From hidden slits in the cave walls, a rain of arrows burst forth, plunging into the formation. Chaos erupted. Some disciples were struck and fell back injured, others barely managing to shield themselves in time. Cries echoed through the cavern. The head disciple gritted his teeth and raised his weapon, forcing himself to stay calm. "This cave is filled with traps," he barked. "Move carefully, watch every step." Sweat trickled down his temple as he slowly lifted his gaze upward. The ceiling. Dark, uneven, riddled with shadows. His heart sank. "This place," he murmured, dread seeping into his voice. High above them, hidden among jagged rock formations, Pyo-woo watched silently. His breathing was steady. His eyes were cold. From this height, he studied their movements, counted their numbers, noted their injuries and fear. Every step they took was already anticipated. Every mistake had a price. In this cave, patience was the deadliest weapon. The hunt was far from over.